Liberal media bias may finally be exposed once and for all. I'm Andrew Esquire, and this is The Legal Mindset, where we help you be your own judge. Now, Project Veritas under James O'Keefe has done some daring things over the years. They exposed the community organizer racket under Obama when that election was a thing. And throughout the years, they've really reported on some controversial issues, including exposing what's going on at the border right now and how Biden is really hiding the border crisis. But the latest escapade, the latest adventure for Project Veritas and James O'Keefe actually relates to the New York Times and defamation, a huge defamation case. Now, why is this something that we should be talking about? Why is this noteworthy? Well, defamation, which is something we explained when we talked about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in a previous video, defamation is hard to prove. You have to prove actual malice on the part of the person that made the defamatory statement. So you have to prove that they actually knew what they were saying was false when they said it, because you have to show that they meant harm, that it wasn't a harmless falsity. So that was really what is at the core of the issue of any defamation case. And in this case, what we had was the election scandal. I know. We never want to go back to the election. It was horrible. Frankly, I don't even like talking about last year's election because it was so crazy. But what happened was Project Veritas had reported on Minnesota's 5th district, which is represented by Ilhan Omar, and said that there was some alleged voter fraud in that district. And well, the New York Times didn't like that. They didn't like anybody coming for a Democratic senator. So they said in the New York Times that those claims of alleged voter fraud were false, they were deceptive, and there was absolutely no evidence behind them. Well, here's the problem. They never bothered to try to confirm that. They never contacted any of the sources of Project Veritas or really did any homework or background to look into whether or not those claims were false. And when you say somebody's being deceptive, when you say they're being misleading, and you're the New York Times, you state it as if you're authority. So other periodicals will quote the New York Times as fact, and that's really the problem here. The problem is that the New York Times is treated as fact. When they say that somebody is deceptive, when they say that somebody is false, when they say that somebody is misleading, people believe that. People cite that. And you know what? It's relied upon by not just the public, but by other media agencies. Well, here's the rub. The New York Times ended up saying that actually those statements were opinion, that was an opinion piece, and it shouldn't be taken seriously. Well, here's the problem. You can't make a statement like that and claim it to be opinion. You have to have some sort of disclaimer when you're putting out information that says, hey, this person lied, this person was deceptive, this person had no facts. You need to put out a disclaimer if you think that's just opinion. I mean, that's a strong and definitive statement. And that's at the core of this defamation suit. So Project Veritas is coming after the New York Times for defamation based on those statements. And by the way, they're also coming after Twitter and CNN. But those suits are further down the line. We're going to get to Twitter later. We'll get to deposing Jack Dorsey later. Right now, we're dealing with the New York Times. So how has the suit against the New York Times gone so far? Well, it's been pretty interesting. So the big win was that James O'Keefe and Project Veritas got past a motion to dismiss. And that's huge because a motion to dismiss is like the first step in a court case. And honestly, many cases don't get past a motion to dismiss. A motion to dismiss is pretty much checking to see if you have the basic facts in order to prove the case. And it assumes that everything that the plaintiff, that is Project Veritas, said is true. So it's saying, taking your allegations as true, can you prove the case? If I assume everything that you said is true, can you prove the case? And the court said yes. In fact, they could prove the case. They might be able to show actual malice. And why is that huge? Well, it's huge because people have been suing the New York Times for years. They've been trying to expose that newspaper for years, but Project Veritas is the first one to break through that motion to dismiss. Now, what does that mean when you break through a motion to dismiss? Well, like I said, it means you have the basic facts to file a case, presuming everything is true, but you have to prove that at trial. And when you get past that motion to dismiss, when you leap that first barrier, you could go into what's called discovery. And discovery is the meat of any civil lawsuit. And discovery is often why people try to avoid lawsuits, because it is costly, it is time consuming, it's expensive, especially for lawyers like me. You really don't want to pay us to do discovery, it's expensive. That's why people settle, that's why they have settlements if they get past a motion to dismiss. So in this case, James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, they've said, look, we're not settling. This is about showing liberal media bias on the part of the New York Times against Project Veritas and against conservatives in general. And what happens during discovery? What is Project Veritas going to be able to get? Well, as of this week, they've gotten the first step of discovery, one thing called an interrogatory. An interrogatory is like a questionnaire. You get a certain amount of questions you can ask, and you submit those to the other party. So Project Veritas came with a list of questions, submitted them to the New York Times. Now, there's really three ways you can answer those questions: yes, no, or I don't know. Now, can you take a guess what the New York Times answered to most of those questions? It wasn't yes or no. It was I don't know. In fact, 40 of those questions they answered I don't know in the interrogatory, in that first step of discovery. And that's huge because honestly, they do know. There's something they're not admitting. There's something they're wanting to hide. But the next steps of discovery are going to reveal it. And this is a step that we've never had against the New York Times. We've never had towards proving liberal media bias, and that is document production. So subpoenas, or subpoenas ducis tecum, which is essentially a request to produce documents. So the other side is going to have to put out documents. We're thinking emails, text messages, corporate memos, all of that. They're going to have to produce that to Project Veritas, and they're going to be deposed. They're going to be put under oath in a room and have to answer questions from Project Veritas's lawyers. That's huge. That's massive. Can you imagine the emails, the text messages, the memos that are going on behind closed doors at the New York Times? I guarantee you they're spicy. Now, at the end of the day, all that stuff put together, even with the emails, even with the text messages, even with the memos, they may not be able to prove actual malice. Malice is hard. Malice actually requires coming out and proving you willfully wanted to do something wrong. Now, the judge did say, when ruling on the motion to dismiss, that he thinks there's a possibility of finding actual malice, and we may very well find it. But regardless, that discovery process is going to show us the dirt behind the curtain. It's going to expose the Wizard of Oz. We want to see behind the curtain. We want to get to the truth. And court is really good for that. It's good for that fact-finding process. And you got to understand too, when these people, when these staff members at the Times are deposed, they have to tell the truth. If they lie under oath, that's perjury. That is a crime. So it's going to be interesting to see these people sweat under oath, especially if it goes to trial, if they've got to now testify again, not just in the deposition, but also at trial on what they said. That's more heat than the New York Times has ever had on it. And it's going to be a public trial. It's going to be televised. It's going to be out there. We are going to see it. So why is this relevant? Why is this so important? It's because we live in an era where media is being consolidated, and where honestly, these huge tech companies are dominating media and dominating what we consume. And if you want to know exactly why you should be really concerned about this, check out my video, Big Tech Taking Over.